started here directly. Our topic is the Enterprise Content Management Capabilities of SharePoint 2010. And this is going to be an overview. That's a broad topic, Enterprise Content Management underneath SharePoint. There's lots of new things that are in SharePoint 2010. Some of those things are going to surface. A lot of the things we're going to talk about today have been in the product for a couple of versions, but they're still very important, still very much part of the 2010 product suite. So I want to work through several of those things with you. Like I said, my name is Kirk DeVore. I'm a senior lead consultant out of our Tampa, Florida office, and doing this presentation today. So my goal today is really to provide an overview of those ECM features that are in the SharePoint platform. And that's the right way to think about SharePoint as being a platform, because there are so many capabilities that it's hard to think of it as a product. I step into customers many times, and they have purchased and implemented SharePoint for one specific reason or one specific solution that it can provide, and they think of it as that. But it really is a platform, and I almost always refer to it as a platform. So what we're going to do is my approach is going to be I'm going to walk you through the three main areas that fall underneath that umbrella of enterprise content management, and see how they all tie together and relate to one another, and hopefully get you the information you would need to get started working with these features. By no means is this going to be everything you need to know. This will just get you in the right end of the pool, for lack of a better example, and hopefully that'll get you started, get you to the place where you need to be to go search for some of these key terms that we find. So, what is encompassed by SharePoint's ECM features? SharePoint means so many things to so many people. It's nice to be able to talk in just about one segment of what it's capable of doing. And there's really three main areas that we focus on when we talk about enterprise content management underneath SharePoint. First one's document management. Second one is web content management. And the third one is records management. Three distinctly different things. Sometimes some of them get confused for one another. So that's why I want to just break it out at a very basic level, what you're going to need to undertake. Document management, that's going to be the underpinning for the other two. Document management, in many organizations, is what SharePoint does for them, right? They brought it in for document management purposes, and if they get around to web content management or records management, great. Other organizations, their number one need was records management, and they brought it in for that reason. Likewise, there's other organizations where they really wanted it as the web content management feature. But I'm going to start from a technical look at this. I'm not going to be technical, but I'm just saying as a technical person, I always look from the bottom up. What are all these features built on top of? And document management is the one thing that these are all built on top of. So at the core of the document management discussion around SharePoint, you need to be introduced to the concept of document libraries. Every organization that deploys SharePoint uses document libraries in some form or fashion, just because the product itself functions on top of this concept. And many times we feel like the person that's sitting in the upper right-hand corner there, well, we have documents in our organizations, documents in our business unit, and they're kind of everywhere. There's not a central repository where these things belong, and SharePoint's perfectly architected to begin to address that. I will be the first one to tell you this. If you implement document libraries wrong, you're going to have the same problems you've been having. You're going to have just another big file share. But done right, SharePoint document libraries really do offer you a new approach to some problems that have plagued IT and business organizations for decades now. For as long as we've had file shares, as long as we've had local area networks, we've had some of these same problems. And some of those that I hear over and over again when we get ready to implement SharePoint is we ask them, how do you collaborate? Where are your documents stored at today? And they said, well, we all map the S drive, for example. We log in the morning, get our S drive mapped, and that's where we collaborate. That's where all of our documents are stored at. And I go in and I say, can I see the S drive? And they cringe and they look at themselves and say, you don't really want to see how bad it is out there, because what we usually find is there's dozens, if not hundreds of folders and subfolders, and then thousands of documents that have been copied out to the S drive. And when we get in there and start looking at it, the biggest frustration people have is they said, I don't know where to find this information. I don't know where the documents are that I need. And so what they end up doing is they end up asking somebody else, and then when they do find it, what do? They copy it to their local hard drive. So they've got a copy of that document. And that immediately brings up a new layer of problems for people that have plagued the file share scenario for decades now. Worse yet, people will then begin to use their Outlook or whatever email client they have, and that will begin to be their file store. And as anybody who's managed a email system knows that the bloat of your message store just can get out of hand pretty quickly. SharePoint, hopefully, is going to be one of the key features that will, or the document libraries will be one of the key features of SharePoint that will help you get a grip on some of these things. So when I talk about done wrong, what I mean is that the problem, the number one problem with a file share is that really the only thing you know when you go out to that S drive and you take a look at something is you see the file name and maybe a timestamp on that file. You might be able to find out who saved that or copied it in there, but that's about it. You literally have to open every one of those documents to really know what's inside of them. And the naming schemes, sometimes with good intentions, they start out well, but we end up with some problems even on those naming schemes when we get into some other troubles like that. So that's where SharePoint introduces the concept of metadata. Data about our data, basically, data about this document. And when someone architects their SharePoint document libraries right underneath this enterprise content management umbrella, and they say it's time for us to do this right, they'll build a document library that's either specific to a certain type of content, certain type of documents, or they'll do some other things with it. But everything that I'm going to talk about is pinned by this concept of metadata that gets associated with documents. And what that means is that when a document gets checked into a document library, there's no more where we just copy it, drag and drop. I mean, you can do some of those things if you want to open your users up to do that. But the mental shift is that now documents, when they get into a document library, they're checked in. And then you can check them out, and they're essentially locked while they're checked out, and you're working on them, and you check it back in when you're done. And that's a new approach to dealing with documents as well that you're not getting with a file share, because in a file share, collaboration is a little difficult because you don't know who has the last one that happened open, or if somebody's copied it, they're going to copy over top of it. A lot of those things that go away. But document metadata, you as the owner of a document library are able to say, anytime a document gets checked into my library, you need to tell me about these 8 pieces of information about this document. And right then and there, through the check-in process, the user fills in that little bit of information, and that enables a whole new world, a whole new way to approach document management. I'm going to show you an example this is a live document library that we have at Catapult. Happens to be where we store some of our pre-sales documents. So when we have an opportunity and we're working with a customer, one of the things that we have to get out to them is a statement of work, and that's what exactly one of these. Actually, in this case, I apologize. That's a different demo. This is a presentation. There's a PowerPoint document that's checked into a document library, and what I'm looking at right now is the metadata that's associated with that particular document. I don't have to open the document up. I don't have to look at it. All I need to do is go and look at the metadata associated with it. And you can see several things. A couple key pieces I want to point out is that on the left-hand side is the name of the metadata, on the right-hand side is the value assigned to it. So our consulting practice is broken up into different solutions. I happen to be part of the information worker solution, and so this document applies to me. There's an application development solution, and I don't really have to look at their documents. So as I come in here and I check my documents into the library, it's important that I mark it as an information worker solution document. And then the document itself, it can be in a different state or a different phase, and you see some of those things. There might even be just some straight-up keywords we want to drop in, words that are important to this document to save somebody from opening it up and such. So what I want to point out on the metadata is that it's practically unlimited. Your business needs, your business process will decide what metadata should be associated with documents that you check into a document library. And building on top of that is now this concept of a library view. Remember I mentioned that if you go out to the S drive, it's really hard to find things. You can't really just go there and just look and know. You're going to have to actually have somebody guide you through that probably. And the real problem with some of that is that it doesn't scale well, doesn't span well. With document libraries and the metadata properly applied, that buys us the ability to have views of our data. So there might be 1,000 documents in my document library, and that's just not going to be a problem if I did my metadata right. If I didn't take the time to architect out what metadata should be associated with these documents, and I've got 1,000 documents, guess what? I've got the exact same problem I had with a file share, and that is just the user's overwhelmed when they come in. Let me show you an example of a library where I've got a document library. There's two views up on the screen. View 1 at the top and View 2 is kind of overlaid on the bottom. They're both pointing at the exact same document library. And what the data, there's hundreds and hundreds of documents in this library. And what this is that we have a phone bank where people call in and they tell us information about a specific event that has happened. And our people on the phone, they fill out a form and then they save it in the document library. And when that document is saved in the document library, guess what they're able to put in, and that's the metadata associated with it. Basically, this phone call came in, and it came in from a certain agency, and there was a specific person who notified us at that agency, and there were some details about some event that took place. And in a file share, if we threw that in there, the person would have to literally open up every one of those documents in order to make any sense out of what's in there. Instead, SharePoint, the moment it gets checked in there, it's saved, it's secured, it's going to get backed up, it's all those good things. But it also now surfaces the metadata through a view. And so the top one is kind of all of these documents, and they're grouped together by the agency that notified us. The view at the bottom is filtered down to just say, I don't care what agency it came from, I just need to see the documents where the moving to column, that's a column right in the middle, is equal to the letters DJJ. If it's anything else, I don't really care about it. And so as you learn and understand your business processes and that are relative to documents you're checking in and this concept of metadata, you'll find unlimited number of opportunities to say, okay, this is how we would apply the metadata. No longer are we bound by, hey, what's the name of this file? If you look at these pages that I'm showing you, you have no idea what the name of the file is. It's just some random string, right? You can see the date created. That happens to be kept up on there because it's important. And notice as well, too, at that very top view, the third column over is date of move, and the very final column on the right is the date created. Two totally separate things. They're both important. One is from data that's inside, basically metadata that somebody typed in that said, okay, this event that was called in about, happened on the very top one, let's say it happened on September 5th. The document wasn't created until September 7th. No problem. We don't look at that created column and assume that's when the date and move happened. The date move happened based on what's in the column over there called date of move. And so you'll see more and more these kinds of features of a document library. These library views are going to be critical to the rest of your enterprise content management features here. So document versioning, that's another big problem with a file share, and that is, what is the latest version? And did somebody copy over my copy that I was working on since I last opened it up, and those kind of things. And SharePoint handles quite a bit of that for us right now, and it does a great job out of the box with document versioning. You can turn this on or you can turn this off, and there's several parameters in the middle that you want to set. By default, some of the key things that are important to you is that it will keep X number of versions back for you. Like here at Catapult, we leave it at the default, which is 5. So if we have a sales document where there's a bunch of us collaborating on it and it's going through several changes, we don't need to keep 10 copies of that document around, but we may need to roll back. We may need to go back and look at 2 versions ago because we've changed our numbers or put a different graphic in and whatnot, and not everyone agrees, and we need to roll that back. SharePoint's your right tool that's part of this document management, part of the stuff that you cannot do with a file share. And I'm going to jump over there and show you just a quick image of that. That is not the right thing. Let me apologize. My screen jumped to the wrong thing. So document versioning, right there. Take a look at the top. That's me looking at a view, and the bottom part is what you see when we click a little drop down here that says show me the version history. And if you look at this, this is a sales document. It's a statement of work that our salespeople have created. And you'll see that the current version number is 8. The last version to be checked in was stamped as version number 8. SharePoint does that for us automatically. It increments that up. And we have 5 of the rollback versions that if we need to go back to them. That block at the bottom shows us the metadata that was put on the original version and hasn't changed any. If any of that metadata had changed along the way as it went from, say, version 3 to 4 to 5, that would be highlighted as well in this list. But you can see some very important things here. You can see version 3, it was last modified on the 30th, and Kevin McDonald did that, and then Terry Burmeister on the October 1st, she made some edits, and then you see me there. I was version number 5. And every time you have a document checked out and you check it back in, regardless of the amount of change you made inside, you're always given the opportunity just to leave a comment. You can see a couple of us left a comment that we wanted to make sure that everybody else saw, where it rolls all the way up to there. Now, if anybody ever decided that, hey, Kevin's version he checked in as number 8, is just, we're wrong, we need to all roll back to Terry's version, that's not a problem. We can roll back, we can do that, we can extract that out. There's never this concept of saying SOW-1, SOW-2, SOW-3 file names. Again, you don't even see the file name that's associated with that. SharePoint kind of masks all that for you and keeps all these versions automatically. A very important thing to understand, very important thing to leverage, and it makes a lot of sense to support when we get into the web content management discussion. Document workflows. SharePoint is a great way to automate some of those mundane processes, some of those required processes that have to happen each time a new document is created, edited, saved, and you can trigger this also off of the metadata. Maybe we don't need that workflow to fire the moment that it's created, but when the value changes from pending to complete, then you want to workflow the fires. It will send somebody an email to come in and review this. Again, the sky's the limit. Workflows are a great topic. They're a whole conversation, a whole webcast of their own. Something new to point out about document libraries in SharePoint 2010 is this concept of document sets. Many times organizations find that when they create, say, a contract document, there has to be also a budget as well as a cover letter that go along at the same time. So the concept here is that now when you create one of those, the system will generate templates or blank copies of the other two and bind them together. And if you ever delete them or move them off to another place, the metaphor is there that these stay together as a set. When they go out the door to the end user or wherever they go, they can be presented separately. But when they're inside of SharePoint, they have a connection to one another, and it allows you to build tighter and tighter business processes around this concept of document sets. Just a couple more quick things before we move off of document libraries. The taxonomy and governance. Taxonomy is just basically meaning all of this metadata, understanding how the metadata relates to one another, and the hierarchy of navigating through documents, and then the governance are topics such as who determines when we need a new document library, who determines when we delete things out, when do we clean up, who should have permissions to read, who should have permissions to edit things. Those are important topics. That's all part of not doing it right. If you just throw SharePoint out of the box, stand it up and let your users go at it, you're going to have pretty much the same situations you have today with your file shares, and your document management story isn't going to be as good as it could be if you take some time and just go back after these topics and look at that. Enterprise search, I can't say enough about how important enterprise search is going to be to your overall document management efforts. SharePoint has an enterprise search capability built into it. We have another webcast coming up in this series that focuses on search, and that might be something you want to tune into as well. I'm just going to leave it at that, but it's a very important topic. Web content management, different from document management. Web content management builds on top of SharePoint's publishing features. So the concept here is that we've got web pages. Lots of web pages or just a few web pages, it doesn't really matter. And we've got an audience that's going to consume these. So the web publishing scenario generally is this. You have 1, 2, 3, just a very few authors of the content, and then a much broader audience that's going to consume them. And it's a little different from document collaboration, which I've been focused on up to this point, but web content management in its most fundamental state is this. We've got web pages, and where are they stored? in a SharePoint environment, they're stored in a document library. No surprise there because everything kind of underpins that. End users that are browsing your website built on top of this, these publishing features, they have no clue that this is being stored in a document library, nor should they care. But you as the owner of the content really can start to take advantage of some of the features that are built on top of the document libraries. And so that's where I want to focus on some of the web content management features that build on top of the document library features. The biggest one to point out is the versioning I showed you a moment ago, where we have major versions where we went from version 3 to 4 to 5. In the publishing space, there's this concept of major and minor versions. And you can use the major minor versions in the document management space as well too, but it makes its most sense when you're talking about publishing a page. And I'll just kind of step through a scenario where, let's say we have a page out there and it's version 3.0 right now. It's been edited 3 times since it was first created. And it's time to make some more edits on it. Now there's a group of us, a handful of us that have edit capabilities, and then the rest of the world just has read capabilities. What we can do with SharePoint, we don't have to go and edit this page or copy this page over in a totally separate system, something we keep locked in the basement, let's say, and we go down to the basement and we make our changes. We do it right, you can do it right live on the system. You can edit that page, and when you save it, it gets saved as version 3.1. The only difference is the only people that can see your changes are your peers that also have edit capability to that page. Everyone else continues to see version 3.0. It's not until you take the last step, which is the publishing step. So there's editing and saving. That's the collaboration part. But when you're ready to publish, that's when you're saying, okay, this document is ready, or this page is ready to be seen by everyone. You start the publishing process. SharePoint takes over from there, and now the page is published. This is the key to collaborative web content authoring inside of SharePoint, where you may have web authors that are geographically dispersed or time zone or whatever ways, even different languages they speak. They can collaborate together on a page, a set of pages, work on them. You'll use the major and minor versions. All of that rollback I showed you before, that still applies as well too. So if someone makes edits to version 3.17 and we need to roll back to 3.16, you can do that, and there's no heartache lost there. We can move forward. The moment it's published, everyone gets to see it, and then the version is rolled ahead to 4.0, and your editors can turn around the same day or minutes later and start to work on version 4.1 if that's the nature of your content, if it changes that often, and then the version 4.0 will just be fed out to the users out through there. Now that's part of the solution. The other part of the solution is this concept of the workflows. I'm bringing back in another thing we talked about from document libraries, and that is that the workflows can be tied to this as well too. Specifically, a workflow that's canned and out of the box for you to fire off will be the approval workflow. The approval of this content may be separate from the editing of the content. So we have a couple editors, they're graphics people, they're writers or whatever, yet they don't have the authority to say, yes, this is approved message to go out. So you can build and design into your SharePoint architecture an approval process, and the workflows take care of that, and they make their way out there, and people around your organization, it's something you define if it's one approver or a chain of approvers. Not until they come back in and say approve does the workflow take over and then hit that publishing button for you, if you will, and take it from version 3.0 to 4.0. So it's another layer of complexity, but it's also something people find very important. Also, too, is this concept of authoring sites and publishing sites. I mentioned that we can do all of this right in one SharePoint document library. However, some organizations, they don't want to do that. They want to have a publicly facing document library and then one that's inside where all the authoring is done, and they're not comfortable with the concept of the versioning and those kinds of things. So SharePoint will allow you to do that, allow you to have, if you have just a single SharePoint environment, just a single farm, you can have one site that's a mirror of your site that everyone has permissions to, work on the second one, we'll call the authoring site, and it will allow you to make all your changes there, even have the approval process. And then one more step will be the instead of just publishing, it'll be actually be a content deployment. And so you can do it inside of one environment, or many organizations, I'm just trying to show you some scale. This picture I've got up here shows organizations that would have multiple SharePoint environments. This one on the right-hand side is our intranet. It's our authoring farm. It's maybe a mirror, or it's just maybe it's just a tiny subset of what we really have out on the production farm that the world can get access to. But you can make all of your changes on the authoring farm, even if you want to do the versioning, even if you do the approval. That's good. At the end of that whole process, then there'll be an automated solution called a content deployment job that will push it out to the production farm. And the only reason I point these things out is that there's different needs in different organizations, and you're not locked into using all these features or none of these features. You can do them as need be. An important thing about the content deployment jobs, many times it's fine this was approved on the 15th of the month, but it's not going to be released until 1 a.m. on the 1st of next month. That's not a problem. I don't know many of our web admins that want to come in at 1 a.m. and do the promotion, or remote in and do the promotion. That's where SharePoint allows you. Just go ahead and schedule ahead of time. All of the approved packages, that's the right term, content deployment packages will be pushed out to the public farm at 1 a.m. on the 1st of the month. That really frees up a lot of your IT resources to kind of get out of the publishing business. And that's one thing that probably is worth pointing out here is that a lot of these things are intended to have IT will configure it and set it up and train the business users, and then the business user will no longer be at IT's mercy to come back in and every time we need to edit a page. Build it right, and then your end users can take care of their own needs. One big change that was done in SharePoint 2010 was a lot of investment was made in the ability to do in-browser editing of your pages. Before you could do some, you had to work in something called a content editor web part and such. Now natively right on the page it's editable for the people who have permissions. Before you would almost always need someone to get in and learn SharePoint Designer. Great tool. It's very powerful. People can make some big mistakes and kind of do some damage to your site. If editing inside of the browser itself is sufficient for your environment, you have much less overhead involved here. And our last section, records management, totally different from web content management, similar to document management. And really it comes down to this. What is considered a record inside of your organization? Yeah, it's a document, but this is a document that has some special requirements around it. And so the quote I threw up there is basically that a record is a piece of information that's subject to organizational business rules that require it to be rendered immutable and assigned a retention period. Basically, once it gets checked into a record center, once it gets declared a record, it can't be changed. It has to be locked down, so it's immutable. And likewise, once it's checked in, it can't be deleted until a certain retention period has expired. And then even once the retention period expired, there might be some more regulations that's put around it. And that's the key. These are highly regulated documents. Not all of the organizations that pick up SharePoint are even interested in records management, but those that are find these feature sets to be very helpful for them to get their hands around it. That icon, that picture I used in there is what we kind of think about of a record center, where it's a locked away room, it's air conditioned, it's put off to the side, and there's thousands of documents that people don't go and look at very often, but when they do, they really need them because there's probably been a legal discovery filed against the company. We have to go back and prove certain documents contain certain information. The biggest suggestion I'm going to make for you is that if you have a legal department or a communications department or someone who's in charge of your needs for records, they're probably doing it on paper. They're probably not aware that SharePoint has this capability. So if you have this platform in-house, it's probably time to engage your records management personnel and bring them to the table of discussion. You're going to need lots of things. I've just put on here on the slide that proper planning probably requires someone with previous records management experience. Many times I've seen a room full of technical people, and they've seen this feature set, and they don't know up nor down with good records management practices. Someone who has a background in library sciences, who's not a technical person at all, is going to absolutely understand what records management is compared to document management, and they'll be able to bring you forward to. One of the very first things you're going to need to come up with is a file plan for each record type that's been declared, and there's a whole science behind this, and SharePoint does a great job of working those features out. This was a big investment area in SharePoint 2010 over the last version. So in summary, we're at our 30-minute point here. Basically, just want to point out that enterprise content management is a big umbrella over top of SharePoint 2010, and your main areas you need to be concerned with are document management, web content management, and records management. If you don't need to dig any deeper than document management, that's great, but once you do and you've invested the time to understand and leverage all the features there, it's going to make it easier for you when it is time to step up to the plate and address web content management, record management, because they all build off of each other. And just a couple other recommendations. Just don't skip your taxonomy and governance planning. Those aren't very attractive discussions to have, but they're very important once you see the scale that these things grow out to. And then that last little tidbit there is just search is going to be a critical part. I can't imagine getting on the internet today and not having Bing or Google or one of those search engines out there. If I had to just know where my documents were, same problems I have today with file shares would still kind of haunt me with document libraries if I didn't have the search capabilities that are wrapped around, and that's just a good discussion for another time. All right, so that's the presentation for today. I appreciate you being online here. My email address is kirk.devore@catapultsystems.com if you needed anything like that, and I appreciate your time today. Thank you very much.